Basketball is very good. Jimmy Butler is actually a good teammate. Sabonis is the most important front court pacer. De'Aaron Fox is better than Donovan Mitchell. Basketball is very good.
Hello, and welcome to the Ringer NBA show. It's Groove Chat. I still don't know the origin of why I do that.
It's great.
We'll find out one day. Paolo, Uggetti.
I like it. What's up?
Justin Verrier.
Young Flem checking in.
The number one Wilco fan at this table. And Ailey O'Shaughnessy, who's never heard of Wilco. What's up?
Thank you.
Guys, I can't wait to talk to you. I want to get a little. Let's start with the Kyle Korver trade. We'll do news at the top. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Luka Doncic, which is kind of become, I think, my favorite thing about this NBA season.
I like that pronunciation.
Thank you. Shout out to Kyle Mann,
good.
whose dime drop video showed me the way of the true pronunciation.
Can we get a slow-mo of that?
We're also going to talk about things that we were wrong about in our early season predictions, because we've got about 20 games. We got a nice little sample size to go against it. Can we talk a little bit about this Korver trade?
Yeah.
Let's.
I think it's useless.
Whoa.
Yeah, I just don't think it matters. I think that this is a trade where you feel good about it now, and then people are just gonna hunt Korver out on pick and rolls and in the playoffs. And I'm a little bit nervous for Utah to have two guys now. Gobert obviously is a much bigger part of the team than Korver is, and the Korver is just supposed to provide some shooting and some depth there. Mm-hmm. But Korver's a liability straight up on defense, and Gobert is going to get kind of schemed out on defense in the playoffs. And since they have such high expectations for themselves, there's something about this trade, although they didn't really give up a ton. It's Alec Burks and 2 second rounders. I just feel like it's kind of like, deck chairs on the Titanic.
I don't think they're expecting Korver to be that much, though. He's not like a side dish. He's like the cranberry.
Okay. Oh.
Okay. But isn't the cranberry a side dish?
He's
Guess
like a
who's still
dressing?
eating Thanksgiving
Isn't the cranberry a side dish?
Almost December.
Well, but it's like not...
It's a premier side dish.
Yeah, it just helps everything else out.
Okay.
They're not expecting him to take over Joe Ingles' shots.
Yeah.
But he's definitely going to add to it, and they need everything they can get right now.
I agree that in the long term it is useless, but I think in the short term it gives him some life that they kind of need. I mean, they're literally the second worst team in the West right now.
Yeah.
By record. And a huge part of why their defense hasn't been as good is because they're just not making shots on the offensive end and instead turning the ball over. So if they can get another guy in there that can give them a few shots a game, I think that'll go a long way, at least in the short term.
Plus, it's really jarring how they're not taking advantage of their good defense when it is good. They'll force a turnover and then nothing will come of it on the other end. That is something that with a fast-paced offense, you have Korver running down there, you can give to him and he can make something of that.
Yeah, Kevin Pelton had this one stat that according to Second Spectrum, the Jazz have actually opened up the highest quality three-point looks in the NBA this season. But because they have no three-point shooting, and Alex Burks, not a three-point shooter, was among their best three-point shooters, they just weren't able to take advantage of it. So I guess the glass half full look would be that if they have the looks already, that they just get someone in there and they can take advantage of them.
Do you have a grander diagnosis for what's going on with this team?
I think Paolo hit on it, and he wrote about this on Sunday. It just seems like they're the type of team that needs to out-execute everybody. They don't necessarily have just elite talent across the board. Donovan is obviously their best offensive player, and he's just been struggling big time. What do you have? 35 points or 35 shots and no assists? You just can't win playing that way. And so I do think it has a trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
If they aren't executing on offense, then they're playing in transition on defense. And then their biggest asset is Gobert, who can still erase things, but if he's running...
He's running and he's getting caught out of position, yeah.
Yeah, so I honestly am pretty hopeful about Utah, and I think there are a couple moves like this on the margins, like Korver, that I think could put them right back in the mix for the 2-3 seed.
I feel like this was I got to experience what it would have been like if the Sixers had traded for Korver vicariously, which is not good. I wouldn't have felt good about it. But, that had been a very flimsily sourced rumor that there had been talk about Fultz for Korver.
Straight up?
Well, I mean, it depends on who you ask about the Fultz trade market
the Fultz
right now.
thing is weird.
I mean, Bill on his pod with Russillo yesterday, and I feel like this was just an effort to trigger me, was saying Antonio Blakeney.
Right,
and a second.
To be fair,
Arcidiacono.
Ryan Arcidiacono.
Like Antonio Blakeney. Joke.
I love Ryan Arcidiacono.
Yeah.
I can't say that name.
I can't either.
Can you do it?
Arcidiacono?
Arcidiacono.
Arcidiacono, yeah.
He looks a lot like Kirk Heinrich.
Bobby is nodding.
Yeah.
He's the pronunciation guy here.
all the trades that they were throwing out there, with the exception maybe of Josh Jackson for Markel Fultz, which is like my trash for your trash, like I was basically, this is offensive. And I just don't know that Korver really changes anything for anyone. I guess he helped out Cleveland, but I don't really know if that's like the kind of move that.
Well, wasn't what Philly was struggling with earlier in the season? Didn't Joel talk about how they got rid of all their 3-point shooters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
guess who's a 3-point shooter?
Yeah, Kyle Korver. But guess who gets nuked on perimeter defense, and guess who can't play perimeter defense already is Philly.
I don't think he's that bad on defense. I think
I think he tries real hard.
Yeah. He's average, and he's just like, he's so smart that he can like kind of do things. Which is why I think someone like Gobert having an eraser back there makes a lot of sense for him, for a team that he's on. Because he can cover for some of those, like he basically warps the floor to the point where he doesn't really even have to cover that much.
That's a good point. You're talking me into this.
I also think that it's kind of hard to maybe quantify like what this kind of does for a team sometimes. Like I went to the game when they were in town playing the Lakers, and you could just kind of tell they were like really frustrated about the fact that like they didn't really have an answer for what was happening. It was just the way they were playing, turnovers and the poor defense. Like they didn't really know kind of what to do about it. So something like this maybe like is like a spark in a way, like maybe just gets them motivated. They just need like a refresh button.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with Paolo, because not to overstate his importance, but Korver, just by the way he plays, kind of pumps some purpose into an offense. I mean, he's constantly moving, he's opening up passing lanes for other people. He's taking away defenders. So something like that, like all of a sudden they get on a hot streak, could really help them out.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the games last night.
Oh, wait, you don't want to talk about Alec Burks?
Oh, do you have an Alec Burks take?
The main takeaway of this trade?
Well, he's reunited with Rodney Hood.
That's big. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. I don't know if that's something that either of those guys were looking forward to. I didn't
basically
check.
the same guy.
I'm not on Rodney Hood Twitter right now, but yes. Do you have an Alec Burks take?
No, but
I think
this is the last of him.
I think Dan
Alec Burks
Devine
going
had
to
it right
Cleveland.
when he tweeted like he always thinks that the next year is going to be Alec Burks like
I
breakout year. It's like, and it's
think
probably
that.
never going to
I
happen.
like
always
Alec
think
Burks.
that.
He's had like a couple of like season-ending shoulder injuries, hasn't he?
He's just been injured.
Yeah, he's been injured constantly. He
went to Colorado?
Did not know that.
I think so, yeah.
Wow, I'm like his biographer.
Big
I'm like
draft
Ron
head.
Chernow of Alec Burks.
Yeah.
Let's get serious. Let's start talking about something that we all feel deeply about, passionately about. Let's talk about Luka.
Seriousness of the season's over.
Last night, the Mavericks beat the Rockets 128-108, and Luka has kind of now entered. We did the song this week, Hallelujah. Shout out to Isaac and Jason Gallagher. It's like an absolute masterpiece of
so good
content. But he is now kind of like drifted into this zone for me where I'll watch him no matter who he's playing against and no matter what the score is. And that's a kind of really special type of player. There's not a ton of them. There hasn't been a ton of them because you have to have a kind of magic to you. And I guess I actually literally mean like a certain Magic Johnson magic to you, because part of what really excites me about a player is court vision. There's like the ability to kind of change the physics and the dimensions of the court based on like his field of passing. And that keeps you as a viewer really stimulated because you never know when like a crazy pocket pass or a cross-court bounce pass or a no-look pass is going to come. And you kind of just get into watching plays unfold that way no matter what the score is. And players who can kind of change the way the game looks and feels are always really exciting in that way. And Luka is kind of entering into that zone right now. And he has a certain effervescence and cockiness to the way he plays that's really different and really, really exciting. And you can kind of see him like last night going up against Harden. Harden was basically playing his looper. He was basically playing like a younger, slightly cagier version of himself.
Right.
And it was fascinating to watch. I mean, we haven't really talked about him yet on this pod since really earlier in the season. What are some of you guys' feelings about him right now?
I think that I go back to when we were talking a few pods ago about what makes a league pass team. And I remember saying that I really need somebody like for their lead ball handler to have a guard, basically somebody who handles the ball who kind of creates that excitement. And I think like Luka perfectly fits that. But like he has kind of like you said that magic that we see in Steph that gets us excited about Steph. And I think it's also just kind of the allure of the unknown in a way of like not knowing what he's going to do next, of not knowing what he could do. With him, it's more so because he's a rookie still and he's playing to the level of all-star level almost. So like the combination of like Harden's game with like Curry's excitement, if you will, makes for like a really special combo.
Yeah, and I think the third line there is just if we want things that are unexpected, it's like it's more exciting when it comes from someone that is like more of an underdog, more physically, oftentimes. Like
thick.
Like Jeremy Lin too. Like, you know, that was like that is kind of like not quite the level of excitement, but it had that kind of unexpected
even like an Iverson.
Sure.
Like I look at his personality and it's very like Iverson-esque, but he doesn't look like an athlete and he's just getting where he wants to go. And that's just he makes improbable things happen. And like that's basically what you're looking for.
No, Steph's one of those guys. Ben Simmons is one of those guys for me at his best when he's playing like with a lot of
Jimmy.
when he's playing with a ton of confidence. You just watch Ben Simmons play in like an empty gym, basically.
I think there's two type of athletes that when they're rookies, at least, we're trying to figure out their games and see what they play, how they play. There's two types of players that really dazzle us. Guards, anyway. There's the ones that are like so powerful, kind of like Donovan last year.
Russ,
Russ, where they bustle through ways that they shouldn't. They get places they shouldn't. They dominate other sizes that they shouldn't, you know. And then there's guys like Luka who kind of like fold the space on a court and already know to do things that players don't know how to do until they're like veterans. And that's what's actually been fun for me is like seeing him do this against veterans. Like you'll see like, you know, when they do the instant replays and like he's ball faking underneath and you'll see vets like actually look the other way and be totally faked out. Right. And to see that so early on from a player like this is really fun.
He also has this thing that Steph does a lot, where Steph kind of like really popularized, which is essentially taking the flourishes of basketball and making it like a core part of your game. You know what I mean? Like Steph extending the court the way he does with his shooting and dipping under people and kind of just like making his center of gravity so low. But especially with the way in which he extended the floor on offense, it's supposed to be something that you do like once every 100 possessions or once every 200 possessions, but he does it with like once every 5. And Luka has a certain almost carelessness with the ball, but the carelessness is like considered. It's like, I'm trying to get you to look at me going around the back randomly because that's just going to distract you and it's going to distract your help guy and it's going to make everything around us kind of like unbalanced, but I get it when it's unbalanced.
And it's kind of, it's crafty, but he's like 5 inches taller and crafty.
Right.
Yeah, he plays like a veteran. And I think it's really important that he's playing on a veteran team. Like he's not like Trae Young kind of hidden in Atlanta, basically toiling and like trying to outscore opponents just to even get into a game. Like they're 10-9 right now, and he's a big part of it. And like the fact that they're able to compete right away, it kind of almost makes his performances more impressive.
Yeah.
Because he's not just doing this in garbage time. He's basically leading a winning team.
And he's doing it without Dirk.
Yeah.
Not that Dirk is like necessarily like going to pour it on when he comes back in, but I mean, that it is interesting that he's had this kind of wide berth to almost take the team over. You know what I mean? Because DeAndre is essentially a rental. Not, you know, maybe they'll keep him, but like I don't think they should really. Wesley Matthews is on his last leg, literally. You know, it's basically DSJ and Luka's team. Yeah, and Verrier, who will live forever and always be on the Magic and Mavericks until I die. Yeah,
that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but it's interesting to think about what they will do next. Because even if the best case scenario for the season is what they sneak in as the 8 seed, that would be fun because we get Luka in the playoffs. But then what happens after that? Like, which of the veterans they keep around, and like technically they should be tanking to get another player just as good to pair with Luka, because I don't think that Dennis Smith Jr. is the second best player on a team like that. But I also don't think that they're upset with thriving under like Luka right now.
I think Mark Cuban's had enough of tanking.
It's kind of, yeah.
He did it for like
it's
4
like a
games
weird like limbo.
Fan base has to.
Yeah, and they gave their pick away for the trade.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess it's interesting because they're kind of doing what like the Clippers and some of these other teams are doing. They're trying to bridge the gap. They're not trying to go full tank. They're trying to like... And I think it might be to Luka's benefit. We get to see him play through like just early bumps. And I wonder if they come out of this 2 years from now with cap space and like the first thing to actually sell to free agents besides just like come hang out in my really like polished like locker room with all these flat screens in it. Which is like
but the thing is about their locker room, and I have no evidence towards this, but remember when he took over the team, he like revolutionized their locker room, and it was like there's an Xbox in every stall. But like, what if it's still that?
I was like 2 years ago. It's pretty dog shit.
Yeah, and it's like 1999 cool.
Yeah. You have to. You literally have to pass through office space, like people like at their desk in cubicles, in order to get to the actual locker room, which is not like anything in the NBA.
That's awesome. It's like, check it out, bro. I got like a projection machine, and I have like pay-per-view. So like, if there's any like fights you want to order up, we got those.
Got the new VHSs.
The one thing other that I would say about Luka, is we haven't, none of us, I don't think, have mentioned a number yet. And I think that obviously it's become a language of itself, is just to talk about it, whether it's the advanced analytics or just the box score stats of the player. But it was an afterthought to see what Luka's stats were last night. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was,
Right.
I think it was 20 and 6 boards and 2 assists, but it was like, oh yeah, and he did get 20, didn't he? It was more of the highlights. It was him trying the scoop layup and getting that foul on Harden, or like taking those like outrageous threes, like at like weird moments
From
when
the
they're-
corner.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just
Falling.
like, that's kind of fascinating. I also think it's like, he seems like an interesting evolutionary step in the Euro to NBA transfer, where he kind of reminds me of Manu a little bit, where it's like, I don't think that he's changing his game. He's making the NBA change its game to him. Like he still has, he looks exactly like he looked on Madrid.
Mhm.
Like he's playing in that same kind of like really devil may care way that I think sometimes other European players get that beaten out of them a little bit. Like Rubio even like can still make incredible passes, but has almost had to develop like a suit of armor to play. I don't know.
Is that just because where the league is going though?
Maybe.
It helps that everyone's playing fast, so like all these turnovers don't really matter.
Mhm.
I wonder if it's also that he's able to shoot.
Yeah, there's that too. Like
Yeah.
his two biggest like assets on offense are his creation and his shooting. So it really goes with like what you're looking for from that place. And like you said before, like there's no Dirk on the court to really take
Yeah,
away.
and Dirk does become like his own weird center of gravity when he plays, because he's like standing there on the nail and they're kind of like running everything around him, and he can either pass out of it or whatever.
And Harry Barnes is not going to take shots.
No. I want to talk a little bit about the Wolves, because I don't think we've really chatted about them too much since the Butler trade. And what's their record since then?
I think they've returned to 500. But
And they've
I'm
won
not-
something like 4 in a row, right?
So right now they're 11-11. Make a wish.
What is that?
Wait, what?
Could you do a segment where
Like when
Haley
you-
Googles? Talks her way through it.
Like when it's
You don't know what 11-11 make a wish is?
No.
What? Okay, well, it's just
You didn't even never heard of Wilco.
step into my
that
office
shows
after
you the
this. I'll
generational
tell
divide
you
right
something
there.
about
in a nutshell.
millennials. Okay, they have won 4 straight.
7.
Not great
Three.
opponents.
Right. But you
Nets.
got to beat
Nets.
the guys you
Nets
have.
are fine.
Yeah.
Bulls, Cavs, Spurs.
Okay.
But they whooped the Spurs
They
last night.
crashed the
It was
Spurs.
not, Megan Schuster was texting me like, why do I love Robert Covington so much? And like, she was using a lot of caps and a lot of
I'm
exclamation
happy
points.
to explain it. I'm happy to tell you that, like, he is exactly the player that they needed. He's just exactly the player they needed. He immediately makes their team defense better. I don't know if you guys saw this video. I think it was from a couple of days ago, but it was Covington standing in the scrum in front of Towns and like pretending to be a reporter. And he goes,
Classic movie. Yeah.
how come, he goes, hey, Carl, like, how come Robert Covington always bails you out on defense?
On defense.
And Towns like cracked up and Covington cracked up. And I was like, imagine this 6 weeks ago and Jimmy Butler being like, hey, motherfucker, how come I always have to bail you out on defense?
Right.
I'm going to steal your car.
Right.
Exactly.
Do you think
Yeah.
Scott Layden calls Jimmy at night now and like uses one of those voice changers like, you need me.
Yeah.
You need me to win.
Well, look, they're probably not going to make the playoffs, but maybe they will.
Hey.
But this is just such a immediately more entertaining team.
More
and-
fluid.
Yeah, more fluid team.
more
And
fluid.
they became exactly what the Sixers lost, which is deeper immediately. Because you see Rose
Yes.
and Okogie coming off the bench now. And like the Sixers are struggling with they have a great starting 5, and then like they're playing Shamet and these guys off the bench. Like that transfer of rotational guys to Minnesota, and this sort of, okay, it's Towns and down, like there's now a pyramid. It just seems to have made it complete, like so much more sense.
Yeah, the whole trade to me is fascinating because of what you're talking about. Just like the hierarchy of offenses and just like 5 guys versus 3 like amazing
Yeah.
guys. And I just, it seems really hard to put together a functioning offense in a league where like teams like the Warriors exist and teams that are coming up from like the dregs of the league, like the Kings have like 4 or 5 guys that can shoot and that can play offense, trying to do it with 3 guys. And especially for the Sixers, like 3 guys, 2 of whom like can't really shoot.
Yeah.
It just seems like they leaned into Towns as the number one guy, and we'll see if that works out long term. But for now, it's just at least more fun and at least more exciting, and like everyone seems to be playing better as a result.
They look
except
happy.
for Wiggins.
They look good to be playing happy. I think the pyramid concept is interesting because I look at some team like the Grizzlies, for example, where you know what the hierarchy is. Like all the guys around Gasol and Conley know that the hierarchy is that, and now that the team can actually make Towns that the peak of that pyramid, it flows from there, you know, and I think it makes for a better kind of team environment. And, you know, maybe not as high of a ceiling right now, but at least, a stabilizing force.
I mean, Towns doesn't have to have 25 and 20 a night, though, if he's playing happy. And he can have a night like last night where he has, 16 and 11. And they get these incredible like battery in the back performances from guys like Okogie. He was like, he had like 12 in like 8 minutes or something.
Okogie, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, they can get a Sharge performance with 10 points in 17 minutes. Like they're getting like efficient, like impactful performances from all over the roster. I don't think that they have the talent right now to go up against the upper tier of that Western Conference, but I don't really even know what the upper tier of the Western Conference is anymore.
Right. It's the Warriors, and then what else?
I don't know.
It's fluctuating so much.
And even the Warriors right now have an asterisk next to them.
Yeah, exactly. But like it's so. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation about the West as a whole. But any team that gets on a run could end up in the second seed by like after a week. So it's kind of whoever has the more streaks in the end, I guess.
It comes down to Wiggins. If you're going to get rid of like one of your big three, the two have to step into it. And while Towns has done a pretty reasonably good job of kind of asserting himself since Butler's been out, like Wiggins has just been a mess.
Wiggins' trade value right now is very confusing to me.
He's just lucky that John Wall exists, because otherwise he'd be the worst contract in the NBA.
I was just going to start talking about Wiggins for faults, but I'm not going to talk about that.
That would be good
scary.
for Minnesota. Because then they have room. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't think Andrew Wiggins wants to go back and play with Jimmy Butler again anyway, so we can pick that off the board. But
wasn't Wiggins the guy that they originally were supposed to tank for that year?
The Philly was?
Yeah.
I think that's who everybody... I mean, he was supposed to be the like...
Next LeBron.
He was the Fultz of that year. He was like, this is the consensus number one pick. You should just get Wiggins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wanted to talk a little bit about how weird this Western Conference is, though, out of Minnesota. And, you know, we're still 22, 23 games in, 20 games in some cases. You know, the Clippers have only played 20. But it's just, what's real here? Like, what's up and what's down?
I mean,
like we're gonna see the Kings and the Clippers are gonna play tonight. It's one of the most entertaining matchups of the season so far. You know, like two of the most interesting teams in some ways.
I think the best way to do.
Do you disagree with that?
No, I agree.
Of course he agrees.
I agree. What are you talking about?
Sorry, I was like waiting. I couldn't tell if you were like doing the bit you were doing earlier.
Where nothing matters.
I was like, what?
So I was doing this thing earlier where I got in and I was like, I'm so excited for Warriors Raptors, and then it was immediately informed that Draymond and Steph are both not playing. Yeah. And I was like, well, you guys just let me know. Let me know when I should watch basketball. Let me know when it counts. When Summer League's over. When you guys want to play on back-to-back.
Chris is like, I'm just going to go rewatch Little Drummer Girl again.
Well, should I just go home and watch First Reformed then? I mean, what is my life?
I haven't watched either, so you can let me know how they go.
I mean, yeah, it's like, so the Rockets are in next to last place, not the Jazz. They're tied with the Jazz, and they're 5 games behind the 1 seed. Like, what is that?
Shout out to the Suns for just
being
what we thought they were. Thank you.
I think the best way to do this is like, who are the teams we're sure about?
Okay, let's do it.
Sure.
I would say... Thank you, Paolo. Golden State, for sure.
Check.
I think Denver has proved enough. They're a +8 point differential.
When we say for sure, are we saying for sure in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I know that these are legit
And
teams.
you can also say this is who they are. You know?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Go.
OKC, I think, is in there too.
So that's 3 playoff teams right there.
That's it.
So
That's
we're going to have a Western Conference playoffs with 3 teams.
I think,
You just let me know when the Western Conference playoffs starts and when the first 2 teams beat one another so that they can play the Warriors.
I would put the Blazers in there.
I would too.
Maybe, I honestly think I would put the Clippers in there. Because I just think that they're not, like, barring some crazy injuries, and even with some injuries, they're so deep that they're just going to be in games all the time, that even at the worst case scenario, they fall off a cliff, like, they might still be their 7th, 8th seed.
The Clippers
I honestly
are
would do
literally
that.
a band of the most reliable 4th, 5th, and 6th men, just all put together.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan and Bill were talking about them, and they were actually like legitimately firing me up about like the amount of guys where it's like the perfect mix for Doc of a couple of young guys with all the guys he can trust, a couple of guys playing in contract years, a couple of guys who are like, nobody believes in me, and then enough dudes who are so psychotically competitive that they're kind of going to stick around in every game because if they have Montrez and Patrick every
some
night,
of the hardest
coming off the
workers.
bench,
it's going to be hard to be like, you're not going to get, nothing against the Spurs, who everybody knows is like a really incredible organization. I don't see the Clippers getting like stomped out by the Wolves like that.
They have too much energy.
Right.
They can out energy every team.
Yeah, I do think they found guys who like the league had kind of soured on for whatever reason. And
Gallo.
Tobias even was kind of like playing in obscurity.
Yeah.
Gortat is playing meaningful minutes, and they gave him away for Austin, who was, regardless of what we always like bag on Austin about, like he's a wing and like teams love wings.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of that.
And I think it's fair to say that Austin does not bring like harmonious locker room energy with him. I mean, I don't think either of those places were his fault. But clearly, he's not the guy who like transforms the locker room and makes it into like a happy, fun place to work.
Yeah, and I mean, this locker room could have flipped the other way, considering like how deep they are at literally every position.
It still could.
Everyone is like playing for minutes every night to the point where like Boban will play one night and not play for like 5.
Yeah.
Or Harrell will like pop one game and then like Gortat doesn't play.
And that's when I think Doc's coaching comes into play, and it's been impressive so far. Like last night, he started Boban because he knew he could get the rebounding advantage on the Suns, and I think Boban had like 8 offensive rebounds in the first quarter or something like that. Like it was a crazy number. So, and then it changed the game completely. So he just has a lot of options within that team, and I think that's going to keep them in the season. It's going to make them an amazing regular season team.
It's interesting to go back to what you're saying though about the Timberwolves Sixers trade and changing a team from a big 2 or 3 to a big 8 or a medium-sized 8. And how much success teams like that are having this season. How much success you see a team like New Orleans and Utah, who both have like really obvious focal points for their offense, and they're kind of struggling a little bit. Although I think that a lot of it is just like stop-start beginning of the season stuff. But then you look at somebody like I don't know, even the Nuggets are a good example. Over Jokic is more of as much a facilitator as anything else, and on any given night, it might be Jamal Murray, it might be this guy, it might be that guy.
Yeah, they have Paul. Like you'll
Monte
name their big three, and then
Morris
you're
is
like,
like,
oh, they have
being really
Paul
valuable
Millsap.
for them.
Yeah, they have Will Barton.
And the Clippers are the absolutely like the
Raptors
team.
are like that, even though they have obvious stars.
Right.
And is this kind of a response to like these ideas that we've been kicking around about rest and the ideas about like what do you need in a regular season like this?
Yeah, I mean the old adage was that like your depth doesn't really matter in the playoffs because rotations will shorten and like all of your star players will play more, and so stars matter more. But I think there is something to be said about like a team almost figuring out like the hockey wave strategy. If you're just playing like league average to league above average dudes like all the time, then like you're not losing some of those, like you're not punting minutes anymore. So I don't know long term if it's a strategy. I still think even in the regular season like talent went out, but it is interesting to watch.
I mean, the Thunder have even figured that out to some extent. I mean, this was the whole thing when Russ's MVP season was the absolutely like criminal off-on numbers that he had. I mean, regardless of his efficiency, it would just basically be watch every night and it's like, can they live through Russ being out?
Yeah.
And it was like, no, they could not.
We saw this in shorter stints with just the idea of staggering your stars. Like just the fact that like there's always going to be an all-star on the court, and the Warriors take it to an extreme. But if the Clippers have Lou Williams and it gives way to Tobias, who gives way to some of these other guys, like there's really no drop off there.
To say nothing of the fact that they may have the second best rookie in this
That's
class.
what I was going to say. It also helps when your rookie's starting and giving you like really valuable minutes. But I think the other side of that is the Rockets, and they don't have that kind of second unit to come in and like, I mean,
well, they got rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they're playing like Isaiah Hartenstein and like Gary Clark, and it's like that's not going to work in the regular season.
Can we go back in time for a second, and can anybody at this table explain to me why they got rid of Mba, Mute, and Ariza?
Well, I asked John you on Slack last night. I said, like, where do you think that they would be if they would have just carried over their team?
Yeah. And he was like, well, if everything had been happening, if Gordon had been cold and Paul had gotten suspended, he was like maybe like 2 or 3 games better,
I just think you need some stability carrying over. And Paolo, you wrote that article on the Blazers and why it's easy to have faith in them because they have carried over.
Right.
With the Rockets, you can't carry over and only keep your top heavy guys when for 2 seasons, what's been so good about you is that you have like this insane on deck like load of 3-point shooters and guys who can threaten you from every area. Like that was the identity of your team. And then slowly they've all been traded away or have left in free agency.
Yeah.
And you like try to replace them with a bunch of guys right now who are playing a lot of minutes, but not for the right reasons.
It's a bummer because like Ariza's on the Suns and he was there last night playing the Clippers and he's like not. I mean, he's what is he? What he's not
gonna get
adding
traded.
anything.
They'll deal him.
Yeah, they'll deal him. But it's a bummer that he's not on a contending team right now because you know he could be helpful to the Rockets again.
Right.
But he's just there.
He's getting his money.
Getting his money. Like at the end of the day, like that's
living
fine.
in Phoenix.
But, you know.
Getting to wear those cool jerseys.
I don't think they would be this bad, the Rockets, but I don't know if they'd be like still number 2, number 1 in the West. Just because Ariza, even on his best days, is a really poor shooter who can stretch the floor, can at least be like a threat from 3 and defend a little bit. But Mbah a Moute has been out like pretty much every game. Like, I think they actually dodged a bullet with Mbah a Moute. Their problem is just doubling down on Chris and Harden and just becoming that big 3 team without finding these guys to replace them.
That really, and Gordon not being the 3.
Right. They really took some risks with the guys that they backloaded the roster with. Obviously Melo, but like even Michael Carter-Williams. And it was like, it seemed like the sort of thing where it's like, oh, Daryl Morey strikes again. He's going to find the best out of these guys. But really,
I think I was under the impression that a lot of this stuff was because he was thinking 5 steps ahead and thought he was going to get Butler or thought he was going to get somebody. He was going to do what Elton Brand did, which is essentially be ready to pounce the second another star is upset, you know, and whether that was maybe they wanted to get a meeting with Paul George or they thought they had a shot at LeBron or whatever it was that was going through his mind, it just doesn't seem to have worked out as of yet. We're going to take a break in a second. I do want to do the same exercise that we just did in the Western Conference with the Eastern Conference really quickly, which looks a little bit more like what we thought, and we're going to talk about what we were wrong about in a few minutes. But
we got to go back to the West.
Is there any? Let's go through the Eastern Conference. We're sure about Toronto, obviously. The Bucks are the Bucks. The Sixers, that point differential is starting to get under my skin a little bit, but it is what it is. The Pacers play hard every night, are getting meaningful contributions all over their team, are like just a really well-drilled team. Yeah. The Pistons. This is happening?
Blake.
I believe.
It's Blake.
I still don't have faith that this won't fall off.
I think it'll fall off, but the East is so bad on the bottom end of it that it won't matter. They'll get the 7th or 8th seed.
Yeah, but it's like bad now with like decent teams. Like, do you know what I mean? Like now the Wizards are below them, the Nets are below them, the Heat are below them. And while those aren't good teams right now, they're teams with people. It's not like they're playing
with people.
The Phoenix. You know what I mean? Like they have the ability, and we've seen it before, and they have the talent, but I'm not sure.
This was always my case for the Pistons. It's just like they're C to B- level basketball
is better than the D to F that's the rest of the conference.
Yeah, and like I was watching their game against the Suns on Sunday. Why? I had no fucking idea.
Pistons Suns on a Sunday.
And Blake wasn't even playing particularly well that game, but he just has such an effect on the court that I think he can just like do his thing where he just...
Wait, you were watching a Pistons Suns game without Blake Griffin?
No, he was playing, but he wasn't playing particularly well. And this was like a Sunday at like 1:00. Just that little window into
little
my life,
Sunday brunch basketball for you.
Yeah,
I love it.
But like he can just pound on like inferior opponents, and that's basically the story of his career. And I think that's enough to be where they are where they are now by the time of.
He also just seems like pleased to be away from the, I guess, spotlight, if you want to call the Clippers a spotlight, that was the Lob City era and like Chris Paul and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe the better exercise for the Eastern Conference is who's the 8th seed.
I think so too.
I do think these are the teams.
Yeah. Do you think the Magic are going to make the playoffs?
I think the Magic have just as good a shot as the Wizards, and the Wizards are the only one that will push them.
You don't think Miami's going to get hot?
I think the Nets would have pushed them if LeVert wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Isn't LeVert expected to come back this season?
Yeah, but
in like 2 months.
They might be too far out by the time he does.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Heat are sad. I will say that.
The Heat are
I can't believe that this is going to be the Eastern Conference playoffs. I mean, like, that is eyeball shattering.
Let's go Magic.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what we were wrong about. Today's episode of the Ringer NBA Show is brought to you by Microsoft Surface. Thank you to Microsoft Surface for being a sponsor of the show. If you need a device that helps you get stuff done, but is also perfect for when you want to catch up on some fun, like streaming live sports, aka basketball, or checking in on your fantasy team, like your fantasy basketball team, check out the latest member of the Microsoft Surface family, the new Surface Pro 6. Just take the keyboard off and use it like a tablet, or snap it back on and use it like a laptop with up to 13 and a half hours of battery life and the new 8th gen Intel Core processor. It's everything you love about the Surface Pro, now even more powerful. Today's episode of Ringer NBA Show is brought to you by Dark Sacred Night, the #1 new bestseller from author Michael Connelly. Veteran detective Harry Bosch partners with Renee Ballard, who works for the LAPD's Night Beat, to solve the brutal murder of a teen runaway. The case unfolds with a furious momentum, and according to the Wall Street Journal, Dark Sacred Night is one of the best and most affecting Bosch novels since Connelly began. Dark Sacred Night is Connelly's 21st Harry Bosch novel, as well as his second novel to feature Detective Renee Ballard, who first appeared in last summer's bestseller, The Late Show. Titus Welliver, star of Amazon's hit TV drama Bosch, reads the audiobook edition of Dark Sacred Night, with an appearance from the actress Christine Lakin as Renee Ballard on the audio edition as well. Don't miss the novel that the Washington Post describes as darkly brilliant. Listen to the audiobook or pick up your copy of Dark Sacred Night from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever you get books. Go to Michael Connelly, MichaelConnelly.com to learn more. Welcome back to Group Chat. This is a podcast about accountability. So I think it's worthwhile to go back through some of our early season predictions now that we're about 20-some games into the season, and just talk a little bit about like what we were wrong about.
I'll go first.
Okay.
It's big of you. Thank you.
So maybe like a weekend or 2 weeks into the season, somebody tweeted, what teams are we even sure about in the Western Conference that won't make the playoffs?
Somebody tweeted that at you, or they just sent it out?
At random, but I mean, aren't all tweets really at me?
Sure. Well, we're all part of the same conversation, which is what's beautiful about Twitter.
So I tweeted back Phoenix, the Kings, and Memphis.
You're sure they suck. That's what that was.
Basically, like, who are we sure won't be in the playoffs?
Oh, Phoenix, Kings, Memphis, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Memphis.
Mm.
I'm sorry. I mean, Memphis. Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Marc Gasol, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Conley, I'm sorry. The girl who tweets at me every single time after a win, I'm sorry.
JB, Chris Vernon.
I'm sorry.
The genre, the blues.
Beale Street.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Barbecue.
What do you like about them? Do you like watching them?
See, I think that's the problem is that so last year it was really hard to watch them. When a team's not at full strength and they play the way that they play, really hard to watch them, really hard to get into them. But I love watching JJJ. He's a lot of fun.
It's fun to say too.
I think I like Triple J better.
That's way better. I mean, just,
It sounds like a
I love
country
watching
artist.
Triple J.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to forget how masterful, I guess is the word it is to watch Conley.
Mm-hmm.
And Gasol's having a great season.
Yeah,
So-
Conley is just like one of those things where I'm sure at some point he will have an injury that completely wipes him out. But
I think in my mind, that's why I was like, okay, well.
But every time he comes back now, you're still like, God damn, that guy is just amazing
know.
at basketball.
He's so good.
know.
I love watching
too.
him.
Gasol is on another level. I think he's already dealing with some sort of injury. He has a foot injury right now. But like on both ends,
Maybe that's a sympathy injury for his brother, though.
Oh,
Pau had the stress fracture.
oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I missed that. R.I.P. Pau. Because Gasol is like, I think he's like a top 5 2-way player this season, which is incredible.
And Jackson is probably the third best rookie, I think.
I think
There's
there's
also
also
an interesting argument between SGA and Jackson.
I'd still take
I think in
SGA.
terms of like 2-way impact, Jackson might be better
Yeah.
than Ayton right now.
Then Aiden. Well,
Yeah.
I'm saying Luka,
SGA and then
Oh.
and then Triple J.
SGA, Triple J, and you're saying Aiden.
Well, see, Ayton has the numbers.
I don't care.
Well,
Like, the team
That's
sucks.
who it goes to.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
I guess so. So you think Aiton's going to win Rookie of the Year?
No, I think Luka will, but I think Ayton will probably come in second because he's just going to put up stats, even though his defense is really bad. But what I'm saying is I think Jackson overall has been second to Luka.
I do think it's unfair sometimes, though, like the way, for some reason, I find it unfair the way he's getting the Harden treatment from a couple years ago where people are putting up like Ayton getting cooked videos a lot.
I think that's true. At the same time,
He is
he's,
getting cooked.
he's averaging like lower than a block a game, which is incredible for a man that's like just giant and just has to stand there and just do this.
Yeah.
I'm waving my arms to the people at home.
Really good for him.
Haley, so you were wrong about Memphis.
Yes, I was wrong. I'm really sorry.
You don't really have to apologize. You can just say like, I was wrong.
You know what? Twitter makes me feel like I have to apologize.
I don't look at Twitter that much. Justin, who were you wrong about?
So mine's an obvious one. I caped very hard for the Utah Jazz earlier this season. I definitely put something in a group post we did where it was like, aren't the Jazz going to be second in the West? Not even asking the question, just assuming it. And I still have hope as we can circle back to the earlier
One of these
segment.
teams is going to do the second half of the season thing where they win like 15 out of 20.
Oh, we should pick that.
Yeah, so I'm not selling all that stock yet.
No, but they are struggling and they do look poor or worse on defense, which is like the big red flag if there is one.
Isn't everybody doing worse on defense though? Like, isn't that like kind of like almost like I'm not even talking numerically. I just feel like isn't everybody trying to adjust to like the shooting coming from everywhere? Like the call is coming from inside the house. Like,
yeah, for sure. I wonder if that's where a lot of like some of the offensive issues we're seeing with certain teams are too, just because the floor is almost like it's different now.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
I wonder
that's what I mean. Yeah,
I was talking. This is just random, but I was talking with Danny Chow yesterday about like a bunch of stars shooting poorly from three, and I do wonder if it's the fact that like because there's so much more perimeter defense that it's harder to get off a perimeter shot. So a guy like Kevin Durant is shooting worse from three because there's just more people.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and you've got more guys probably in the last 2 seasons, say, who are being moved into positions where we're like, okay, we're gonna play small. But for perimeter guys, I think that you're seeing more bodies like Covington out on the perimeter. You're seeing more bodies like even a Miles Turner or somebody like that, like standing out a little bit farther from the hoop. And if they're guarding against the three, if they're running people off the line a little bit more, yeah, you're right.
Part of adjusting to the movement of three-pointers is learning how to defend them from all positions and all heights.
Absolutely.
Closing out on like a live ball, like on the perimeter is like incredibly tough because you're literally like probably running from the baseline and then trying to stop without like overshooting them so they could just like go by you and still like try to get your arm up. It's like fucking incredible.
Well, this is the whole Billy Donovan thing that I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago where he was just, it almost sounded as if it took him he was like, I mean, it definitely took him several seasons to get used to the NBA or whatever, but he was talking about like, it takes a little while to understand how hard it is to defend the 3-point shooting at this volume and to spread your defense out like that. And then, almost basically be like, then take the layup. You know what I mean? Like, we'd rather trade you the layup than watch you put up 15 points in 6 minutes or in 3 minutes or something and just blow us out of a quarter because you got hot from behind the arc. You know what I mean? And maybe teams are sort of adjusting to that on an individual basis, like you're saying.
Yeah. For me, I was kind of into the fact that I thought the Wizards could be interesting, and instead they become literally one of the most dysfunctional teams we've had in recent history. Granted, they're still 1.5 games out of a playoff spot, which tells you all you need to know about the East. But yeah, no, I was kind of into the idea of, I just think I liked Bradley Beal's game so much that I thought that he would kind of set the tone for them this season, but obviously not the case.
Well,
terrible.
I think that they're way better than their chemistry is.
That's
obviously.
True.
I did not expect them to kind of claw their way back towards respectability a little bit, even though they're not like on any given night, they could just fall apart like they did the other night. And Beal was talking about like, we just kind of regressed to all of our old bad habits.
Yeah, and Otto Porter is just lost right now. I thought he was in the midst of like kind of an upswing because he had one game where he had 14 rebounds. He had a few good scoring games. But last night he was just a non-entity. And I was watching that game for a little bit, and he just doesn't really show up on the court like usually ever when you're watching.
Would you do Porter for Wiggins?
That's what I was just gonna ask.
We were talking about that on Slack, I think a couple of days ago, and Sean was like, I love a my mistake for your mistake trade. I think that was the deal that we were talking about. Yeah.
I wouldn't do it for the Wizards because I think Wiggins would somehow make their chemistry even worse.
I would
love it for the Wolves. I would love it for the Wolves.
Would be great.
More of a green light, yeah.
Yeah. And also just I think he probably is somebody who would maybe thrive in a situation where he was like, I'm one of 7 or 8 guys rather than like I was supposed to be the 3.
Yep.
Yeah. But my coach somehow doesn't trust me or whatever, He's
basically Covington. He's not as good as on defense. He's not as good of a shooter most nights, but he's basically that. I would love to see him go
still
to the Pelicans.
25.
Like I think the Pelicans still need some wing guys. And although he's more of a 4 now, I think he could do a lot in that lineup.
Yeah. Still, like I said, he's still 25. So
what about you?
I was wrong about the Lakers.
Okay.
I mean, and I kind of feel stupid about this because I was like, I was basically essentially wrong about LeBron, and I wasn't like on some Skip Bayless shit where I was just like the fake king and his tin crown or anything, but I definitely was like, this is a different period of his life. I think that we're just seeing the same thing that happens every season for LeBron, which is like a kind of slow start. that then eventually he gets into fighting shape and gets his team playing the way he wants him to play him. And it just so happens that it's happened after 20 games rather than about 35, 40 games this year. And they just look like they can beat a team. Like, they don't look like they're going to win the championship, but I think that I just somehow, even after working in basketball for 10 years, underestimated LeBron James.
I don't think you're underestimating him. I think that we're all waiting for this moment when eventually time catches up to him. And that, honestly, that still could happen this season, Chris, because he's turned it on so early.
Yeah,
like, Paolo, you wrote about that one night. Like, that still could become something. Like, your prediction could eventually come full circle. And so could yours with the Jazz. There's still time for those
They're
two.
still an up and down team, but I don't think and I think that they've done a little bit of what Minnesota's done, which is they beat the teams that are worse than them. And they've gotten a couple of really necessary W's by beating up on Atlanta, beating up on a Kings who are good but are not that good yet. And I think that I was just like, they're not going to make the playoffs. That was kind of like my sneaking suspicion, and now I think that they're probably a lock to make the playoffs as long as LeBron.
We didn't mention them earlier.
As long as LeBron plays at this level.
We didn't mention them.
I think they are where like the consensus almost like bore out. Like, I know some people are super high and some people were like as low as saying they're not going to make the playoffs, but this feels right. I don't know, 11-9 minus 0.2 point differential, and like they had that stretch of, what was it, 7 of 8. Yeah. And now they lost 2 games in a row. Like, they got blown off the floor in Denver last night. I just think like they're the type of team that like, yeah, LeBron can win some games, but overall they're like still pretty mediocre. And that feels right to me.
So I guess then that my follow-up question is are we not talking about that enough? Because usually we would be really like, LeBron being on a mediocre basketball team would be something that we talked about all the time. I feel like we're way more captivated by a couple of different things happening in the league right now. Mm-hmm. But is that just because most of us just assume at some point they'll either make a deal or we'll get even better? We'll just right the ship.
I think it's twofold. I think it's one, it's the fact that the tone of the season is completely different because it doesn't have that same kind of demand.
It feels
rush.
experimental, rather.
That the other seasons in Cleveland had, where it's like, this needs to be a title.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that has helped in terms of like us not talking about it. And I think, like you said, the deal that's coming. Like, I'm very excited to see kind of what is it that they do in terms of the trade deadline. But they have to do something. I mean, the low key story right now that's starting to be talked about more is how much Ingram is struggling with LeBron on the floor, and I think a bunch of people have pointed that out on Twitter, this week. But it's a bummer because like we all expected him to be kind of that number 2 option, and now Haley's laughing at me.
Sorry, no, I remembered a tweet I saw last night that was like, Brandon Ingram is.
Can I tell you something really quick? Can I interrupt you?
Is it how much I say tweets?
No, I just love how delighted you are by Twitter.
I love it.
It's literally poison. Yeah, and you're just like, it's great. Twitter.
I think it's because I blocked like 500 people. Like the other day, somebody was like, "You can't say that you're a suffering Ravens fan because you won a Super Bowl." Blah blah blah. And I was like, block. I just, if it's negative, get it away. But anyway.
I'm sorry, I just didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. Somebody tweeted that Brandon Ingram is a taller, skinnier Andrew Wiggins.
It's pretty good.
I don't think it's that bad, but yeah.
It's been bad.
It's pretty bad. It's definitely not what we needed him, what LeBron needed him to be, what we wanted him to be. The best case expectation is it's not going to be Brandon Ingram. Like we were saying, okay, Lakers' best case scenario is if Brandon Ingram steps up and is the second best guy. That's not happening.
The problem is that Kuzma and Hart are the 2 guys that have fit the best with LeBron, and Lonzo and Ingram are still trying guys figuring it out.
So I wasn't going to do this, but I am going to do this. This is a little bit of a therapy session now for me because I really like, obviously the Sixers are my favorite team, but we've been talking a little bit about some fake trades as like the deadline's kind of heating up, and I sent one that really like I've gotten the reactions to this have been like, this is dark and like, what's wrong with you and are you okay?
Group chats.
Would you guys do Muscala and Ben Simmons for Hart, Ingram, and Ball?
If I was the Sixers,
No.
I would
not.
I might do it.
Yeah.
I might think about it because it's like
objectively. Like I'm asking you guys because for me, Ben Simmons is probably my favorite basketball player, so it would be really difficult for me to do that. I wouldn't want to do that.
I think that Ben in the right situation can still probably be like a top 20, top 25 player in this league. But I do think he's the type of guy that needs the entire worldview constructed around him. Whereas in the Sixers realm, it's obviously an Embiid
Ben and
Butler
four
team.
shooters, basically,
Right. Yes.
who then like the floor opens up and he can make incredible passes, but doesn't have any expectation that he's going to hit an open jumper.
Yep.
I would be fascinated to see how Ben would fit with LeBron, though.
Me too.
Because you just said, like, him and four shooters, that's what LeBron
Narrative wise,
has
it makes perfect sense. It's like the clutch takes over LA, and
Sure.
it's just like he is the prince who was promised, and like LeBron gets to play like the last 5 years or 6 years
And
of
then
his
Anthony
career
Davis
with him.
comes.
Whatever it is.
If the Clippers had anything to trade, that would be a perfect scenario where it's just Ben running everything.
Mhm.
And then he could be.
No,
kind of
I mean,
almost like the
I wouldn't
LeBron.
want. I would want a feeling of like fair return there, and I don't want that to happen. But just thinking about like the Sixers have to grit out games so hard now because I mean, and we haven't even mentioned Joel Embiid's name in this whole podcast, and he might be the MVP. Like he's having such an incredible season, and he is the centerpiece of that team. And I think Jimmy actually plays in a way that Jimmy actually seems to be acknowledging like Joel Embiid is a monster, like, but there's something like off about
he
Ben.
always did. To be fair, like Butler always did that, even in Minnesota.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, Butler's a very willing passer. Like, it's not like he was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said that he did the same thing with Cat and.
He just needs to respect you.
Yeah,
Right.
I think there's a
When he
degree
loses
of
respect, you're not getting the passes anymore.
Yeah,
He's going to take the ISOs himself.
But I was just thinking about, that's a radical reimagining of the Sixers.
I refuse to believe that. I think that people think of Ben now because he plays like such a fully formed, grown man. They forget that he's 22. This is not his game yet. I refuse to believe that this is his game. This is not who he's going to be in 5 years.
My guy needs to start taking some shots, though, outside of the paint. Like, it just needs to happen at some point.
I don't understand, like, it's like you're looking at a survivor puzzle at the end of a challenge, and it's like you're looking at these pieces, and I'm like, sometimes I just don't understand how the pieces fit together with those three.
Did you just watch Survivor last night?
I did. Yeah. It beats watching the Suns and the Pistons, I'll tell you that. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for listening to Group Chat. Thank you for being here for my therapy. Did you have a tweet you wanted to talk about?
I actually do have a tweet.
Vucevic for All-Star.
Yes.
Oh, you didn't get to talk about this. You 30 seconds.
I'll give Paolo. I'll give it to Paolo because
this
you just wrote about it.
Paolo wrote about it, but I feel like this is a joint production by the blog Twitter.
There are a lot of joint productions this year, but like these random
Sabonis,
guys.
Vooch.
Vucevic is going to be an all-star.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Okay.
There you go.
Did you weigh in on my trade?
Yeah, I said I might do it.
Yeah.
I think I'm way down on Ben Simmons right now.
Okay.
I think the Laker fans would be like, hell no.
But
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they would do
I don't
that.
think it works for the Lakers. I think it works well for the Sixers, but I also think like the Sixers could probably get like a legit all-star right now for Ben.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're going to trade
for sure.
Anthony
For, like-
Davis, like you probably trade him for Simmons.
Yes. Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid would be weird.
Fultz back in
Really
practice today,
All
by
right.
the way.
Oh, good for that. Good for that kid. Pulling for him. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. This has been Group Chat for Paolo, Justin, and Haley and Chris. Take care.
Basketball is very good. Basketball is very good.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Annie Finberg,
What up, Vince Carter?
What's good? Kent Bazemore.
and this is the Wingin' It podcast, part of the Ringer Podcast Network. We are so excited to be here. We're going to be bringing you guys NBA news, but not just that, life of NBA players.
A
Guys,
lot of funny.
Right.
you gonna laugh.
On a scale
Yes.
from 1 to 10, how excited are you?
I'm like literally off the charts.
I'm up
100.
there. I'm up there, actually.
Are you really?
I am.
I'm glad you're
This is
excited.
pretty cool.
This is going to be a podcast we got going on all season long. We're going to have a lot of really cool guests coming along. Former MVPs, all-stars, regular guys, not so regular guys. What else are they going to hear from us?
Shoot, man. Anything and everything.
We're going to wing it. Boom. Just all over the place, man. I think, we don't want to be the typical.
Yeah.
We think we all, agreed on that. We're not going to be the typical. We're not going to just talk about basketball. We're going to talk a little bit about a little bit about everything.
Talk about some golf. Whole lot of golf. 30%
No.
gonna be golf.
No. We have our first episode coming out later in November, so don't forget to subscribe. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and we can't wait to talk to you guys. Thanks for listening.
You're gonna enjoy it. I promise.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.